like to welcome everybody out to the October 13th special meeting. The administrator has requested that we go into closed session first. What is the stance of council on that?
Okay.
That's all right by me.
Everybody good?
Yes.
All right, do I have a motion to go in closed session?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We'll be I'd like to call this meeting back to order. Do I have a motion to come out of closed session?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Does any member of council have any conflict of interest with any regards to anything on the agenda today? If so, please state it this time.
No, sir.
Mr. Mayor.
No.
No, sir.
No, sir.
All right, moving on. Our 2023 beach season report. We'll start out with the police department. Mr. Ken, you have the mic, please, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I have several slides here that I want to go over with you today that are going to discuss various things, such as, I'm going to start with a review. This is just kind of a content of what we're going to talk about today. And I asked you just to bear with me. I do have a lot of slides since this was our first summer on the beach. I wanted to make sure that I was as inclusive as I could be to talk about everything that we did this summer. So we're going to review back to January when we had a special meeting when it was determined that the police would be on the beach this summer. The parking enforcement unit we're going to touch on, of course, beach enforcement, and then recommendations at the end, such as operate future agenda items that I plan to bring to the council at one time or another, and then staffing. If there are any questions throughout, I don't know what's the pleasure of council, if you want to ask as we go or if we want to hold till the end. Like I said, I've got over 20 slides. So if we want to, whatever the pleasure of council is.
Why don't we ask as it goes since they changed topics?
Yeah. Wait till the end, they'll be forgot what to do today.
Fair enough. So January 24th, 2023, we had a special meeting and we discussed some of the pros and cons of the police being on the beach. One of the things we talked about was safety with having uniformed and armed officers on the beach. Compliance for folks that were on the beach that seemed to give the fire department and the civilian personnel some pushback when they were trying to gain compliance to ordinances. Informed police there's a recourse for non-compliance. Less liability by having a sworn law enforcement officer on the beach versus a civilian acting in a law enforcement role. Presence of uniformed police as a deterrent versus a civilian. We discussed the patrol schedule from April 1 to October 1, and that's pretty much what we adhered to, was a 6A to 6P, 7 days a week. But it ran through October 1. There's still people on the beach yet today. And it's going to be seasonal, depending upon what the weather does. We kept with a 2 officer per day minimum. And at the time, I requested 4 full-time employees to make that happen. We used our marked utility vehicles. Patrol assignments to the east and west end worked well. And as we mentioned there, we handled code violations, criminal violations, and any law enforcement calls for service on the Strand. What we did was move our parking enforcement folks, which we had 2 full-time police officers that handled parking 7 days a week, which equated to 1 person per day. We moved them to the Strand. We created the civilian parking enforcement unit, and then the beach patrols, so that we had 2 every day, were covered with shift officers, part-time officers, overtime, and administrative personnel, so that we always had 2 people on the beach. Our civilian parking enforcement unit went well, and you'll see some stats here in a minute to talk about what it was that they did. This is kind of the organizational oversight, which was the chief of police. And then we had a sergeant, Detective Sergeant Cox was directly in charge of that unit, which oversaw the operation, scheduled, and handled parking ticket complaints that would come into the building. We managed it with 7 part-time staff. We had some staff that worked much more than others and wanted to be here more. And then there were some that just worked when they were available. But it worked out so that we always had somebody here enforcing parking. From April 1 to October 1 of 2023, we ran that unit. And these are the numbers that we saw: 66 violations of the sidewalk, parking on the sidewalk, 374 in the bike path, 371 for parking opposing traffic, 89 in a posted area, 115 vehicles in the roadway, 33 handicap violations. Now that may include some mainland violations, but 33 was the number that we saw from April 1 to October 1. 49 fire hydrants, parallel violations 55, 23 instances of blocking a driveway, and 32 double parallels for a total enforcement of 1,207 just in that time frame. What's important to note is that our total enforcements, as you'll see here, is 1,564. We started an electronic program shortly after the start of the season, and we had some technical difficulties. It's probably the best way to put it along the way. And we still had some handwritten violations from April 1 to October 1, 357 to be exact. The town did change service providers with our cell phones, which has eliminated some of the technical issues that we had. But in all, we had 1,564 violations that were issued from April 1 to October 1. What's nice is we had 1,404 of those violations that have paid. The remainder are still outstanding. The unpaid process that we have now in place is that after, and as you know, there's a fine escalation. So if a fine is not paid within 72 hours, there's an escalated fine. If it's not paid within 3 days, it goes up again, and within 7, it goes up one more time. So after the 7th day unpaid, we mail a letter telling them, hey, you forgot to pay this. It's now $100. Please remit. 7 days after that letter is mailed, if we still don't have payment, we mail another letter telling them again, hey, you forgot to do this. Finally, we'll mail a third letter after the 21st day telling them that it's their final notice. And if that letter does not end in a payment to the town or to SurfCast for that violation, then we let SurfCast know that the violations are outstanding. Excuse me. And they'll start the collection process after the 28th day. SurfCast, of course, gets into the system, and they're able to find the information that they need to send out those violations, or those to start the collection process.
Can I ask you a question then?
Absolutely.
What is the collection process now? What happens with SurfCast? What do they do?
That I can't answer for you. That's SurfCast handles it. So
Yes.
we tell them that,
Okay.
for example, from all of May's violations have been mailed their final letter. The 7 days have passed, and we don't have payment for May's violations. At that point, SurfCast goes into the system, looks at the unpaid violations for May, and does their collection process. We're not involved in the collection process. It's completely done contractually. Make sure if I'm misspeaking, through SurfCast.
Okay.
They handle the whole thing.
And so how are they doing? There's roughly 160 that are in that category.
We just, as recently as yesterday, started that collection process with SurfCast, because this was something that we weren't doing previously. We were waiting to see, there was some, it may be best to come from Jim with SurfCast, but I know there were some, I don't know what the best word is, but finding a collection agency that was actually able to do this was problematic. And they have somebody in place now that can do that. So I don't have, my finger on the pulse to say how this collection is going to work, but I will tell you that mailing these letters has been beneficial. We have seen collections come in from a second or possibly a third reminder. And I don't know if it's just, I can't answer for why they're not paying it, but the letters are working. For the time that we're spending in crafting those letters and sending them out, we are seeing a response on that.
Do you know the difference between last year that the tickets were given out on the beach as opposed to this year, from 2022 to 2023? Total numbers?
I don't have that number in my presentation. I could definitely get it for you, but I will tell you that this is the first year that we've had someone for the entire season, 7 days a week, focusing on nothing but parking. Previously to that, we had officers that may have been pulled one direction or another that were responsible for that.
Mm-hmm.
The town did give us the two full-time police officers to focus on parking, but they were still uniformed police officers, and they may have to pull off to go to a call for service. In this instance, with civilians, they're not going anywhere. They stayed there the entire time and focused on the violations. I feel that next year it will be even better because if we get the same employees back, we won't have, the onboarding process, if you will, where we have to teach them what the violations are, or take them and show them the jurisdiction, and make sure that they understand what is required and where. So I think if we have those employees come back, and from what I understand, they enjoyed it. They liked being here. Some of them maybe have even asked if we had worked for them through the off season. Yeah, I don't know what next year will bring.
It's my experience. I've talked to a few of them over there, and I think it was 3 of them. I'm not sure how you had 7. You said or something
Yes, sir.
like that. I talked to 3, and they seemed to thrive on what they were doing. It wasn't a thing of I want to give a ticket type of thing, but it's dealing with the public, helping the public, finding out before you give a ticket that somebody's parked the wrong way, tell them to turn the car around, they're going to get a ticket type of thing. I think it worked well.
Ideally,
What I
that's
saw
what,
anyway.
ideally, that's what we want. If I can see a violation in the making, I'm not going to go hide around the corner and wait for them to leave and put a ticket on the window. I'm going to stop and talk to them, excuse me, and tell them what is expected, what the rules are. And they're very thankful that that we take that time, and our parking folks do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
One comment, it's
Yes, sir.
just doing a little bit of quick math. It looks like you're getting 90% of the tickets that you're giving are being paid, which is a good number.
That's good.
Yeah.
I think what helped that was the addition of Surfcast, where they can just instantly pull up the website on their phone and make a payment before they even pull out of the parking space or the illegal parking space. I think that's helped. And, with our handwritten tickets, there is a QR code that directs them to the website, and then going to the website and finding the portal. It was a bit more inclusive of a process to use ours. So I think that was beneficial to move to Surfcast.
So would you call that a success for this year,
I believe so.
for
Yes,
year
sir.
1?
Yes, sir. I know it was nice that our officers still supplemented. They still wrote tickets there. If they saw violations, they still took enforcement action, whether it be a warning or education. But they also were freed up to do other things when they didn't have to concentrate on the parking on the island because they knew that somebody was there. If the dispatch center called us and said, "Hey, there's a car blocking a driveway or a car blocking a sidewalk," we would call our parking enforcement officers, or employees rather, not officers, and have them respond to that. So it freed us up to continue to patrol other areas of the town.
Good.
Any other questions with regard to parking? That's my last slide on parking, and then we jump into the beach.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. That's good.
The organization of the beach patrol is similar to what parking was, with myself as the oversight to all the operations. Captain Gerganis was the main person that oversaw the operation, handled scheduling and equipment procurement. Our 4 key people that worked the beach all summer long were Officer Tracy Phillips, Officer Bill Arp, Officer Anthony Huddleston, and Officer Hunter Whaley. At the start of this program, Arp, Huddleston, and Whaley were in a part-time capacity supplementing. We ended up with some turnover, and we were able to hire in the middle of the season Arp and Huddleston as full-time employees. Hunter and Whaley worked in pretty much full-time hours the entire beach season for us, and did a really good job. Each one of them did a tremendous job covering the beach, being ambassadors for the town, not being heavy-handed with folks that are there. We wanted to ensure that when we put people on the beach, that we had people that had the right mindset, the right understanding of what it was that we were trying to accomplish on the beach, and those 4 people did a tremendous job. This is a snapshot picture of 4th of July. There are 323 shading devices on the 4th of July in the back row, and that's anything from cabanas to shibumis to tied down umbrellas. Our enforcement from April 1 to October 1 looks like this. Glass containers, 76. Pets on the strand, 291. Violations in the dunes, 191. Holes that are in violation of the ordinance, 84 times. 25 vehicles, e-bikes and the like, 25 times. Fishing violations, 44. Surfing is 8. placement of a cabana or shading device before or after 7 p.m., 54. And as you recall, that was changed about mid-season or so. Emergency access obstruction, 191. Shading devices and cabanas, 2,637 instances, for a total of 3,601 enforcement actions from April 1 to October 1 of 2023.
Does the enforcement action, is that issuing summonses? Or?
It's all of it. So it's a warning. It's making somebody do something such as take glass off of the beach. If we find somebody with a glass bottle, we don't say just put that in the cooler and keep it there. We have them physically remove the glass bottle from the beach, just because it's a danger if one of those gets broken. Same way if there's a cabana or a shading device out of line or in a prohibited location, we ask them to move it. There were instances over the summer where summonses or citations, rather, town ordinance violations were issued. The majority of that 3,601 is education. There's a lot of rules, and we want to be sure that people comply to those rules, and we were very successful at gaining compliance. As we'll talk about in a couple of slides that come up, the fire stood up here in January and talked about some of the problems that they had enforcing code on the beach as civilians. We didn't run into those problems. We were very fortunate to have compliance with folks on the beach.
You have numbers on how many of those ended up being tickets? What kind of finances we got off having these officers on the beach all year?
I don't have the exact number, but my estimate would be less than 1% were tickets. So if there's 3,601, less than 36.
Sounds like the basic lesson is the uniform presence when articulating that a violation is taking place usually was effective. It got corrective action on the spot.
It was. And like I said, there was very few instances, and I'll get to this in a couple of slides, where I did a wrap up with the 4 officers that I mentioned earlier. We sat down, the captain and I and the detective, and talked with them about what they saw so that I could prepare this presentation for you. And compliance was great. Very few instances where somebody was less than friendly.
Chief,
Good.
Go ahead, General.
No, good.
Chief, at the top of that one now, it says placement of cabanas was 54 violations. Shading devices cabanas, 2,637. What specific things was the main problems with shading devices and cabanas that caused all these?
They're either not in the back row in a straight line with the trash can poles. They are set up between 3rd and 29th. They're set up within a walkway. That was the main problems, just movement and placement.
It seems to me that when I look at that number, it's a huge number.
It's a huge number.
It had to take a large percentage of the time for these officers on the beach to deal with shading devices and cabanas, as opposed to these other things.
It did. It certainly did. And the times that I spent out there, either supplementing or covering shifts, when I would find someone in violation, we'd have to explain to them why they had to move, and then explain to them where they could go. If they weren't in a straight line, we had to tell them that, where they had to be. And depending upon the time of year, they may have to go 5 or 6 blocks, beach accesses, to find an open spot. And I could understand why some folks might get frustrated. If they spent 20 minutes unpacking their tent, setting it up, getting the chairs, getting the kids situated and all their toys, and they finally sit down in a chair and crack their soda, and then we come up and say, you got to move. And kids are in the water already. It's, like I said, the folks that dealt with this 2,637 violations did an amazing job, because in those instances where it's pushing 100 degrees and they just drove for 10 hours to get to Sunset Beach, and now we're telling them, I'm glad to see you're relaxing, but now you got to pack all this stuff back up and you got to move 5 accesses down. they did a great job, and the folks complied. But yeah, education's a big part of it. And can we, realistically, can we put enough signs out to tell everybody what is allowed and not allowed? I don't know that we can. I don't know that the piece of metal that would have the sign on it would be huge. So it's just a matter of trying to educate, trying to inform, and we're hopeful that those 2,637 people come back next year and remember that interaction that they had with one of my people and say, hey, wait, we can't set this up here. Remember last year? And then they move. So hopefully that number cuts in half. I don't know, a third, hopeful. And I have some recommendations going forward that I'm hoping will help us.
Yeah, that's a good point. It was the first year, obviously. It was the
Correct.
first year for your people to be out there. And obviously the people you had out there had to be quite patient in dealing with the public, especially when you're dealing with the shading devices and cabanas and so on.
They were good.
Very patient. And
They were good.
the ones, again, I talked to them out there, and I was very impressed with all of them.
Yeah.
All of them. I watched an emergency take place. I watched them dealing with people. They were patient. You're absolutely correct, and they handled things well.
They took ownership of it, being kind of a pilot program, or the first time we did it, and not having something to rely on previously with law enforcement on the beach to say, look, this is how we've done it in the past. Let's work off of this model and improve. They kind of started from scratch. All of these employees haven't been here when there was police on the beach. I wasn't here when there was police on the beach. So they did a really good job. Like I said, they took ownership of it. They wanted to make sure that their name was on it. So they wanted to make sure that it was done right.
Yeah, and we have to all realize the weather out there gets very warm. And number two, they're wearing vests. And they really did a good job.
There's no air conditioning in that UTV that I just showed you.
I told them, the faster
Yes, sir.
they go, the better the air conditioning is. Go ahead, Joe.
If you know, refresh my memory, did the fire department keep track of how many shading devices or cabanas they had to take action on?
In previous years, I don't believe they had a number.
No.
Chief? Yeah, there was no number, but
No wonder you want to get rid of it.
I know that, it's similar to parking violations. Each year since I've been here, the amount of parking violations remains constant. Sure, the people who got a ticket for parking in the bike lane this year likely won't park in the bike lane next year. But as you know, this area is growing. There's people visiting from all over the place, and there's a lot more rules than just not to park in the bike lane. So they might move over so far that they're now blocking the sidewalk, and then they're going to get another reminder from us not to do that. So our hope is that I would love to come here next year and have that number be 637 versus 2,637, but I'm very skeptical that it will be.
Well, my thanks and congratulations to these officers.
Thank you.
Doing a great job.
I'll be sure to pass that along. Any other questions on these stats before I move along? So a shot of the Labor Day weekend with 175 shading devices that were counted in the back row. So significant decrease from the 4th of July weekend. Still a very busy day. As I mentioned, I met with the 4 employees that worked the most on the beach, along with administrative staff. And some of the things that we talked about were the vehicles that we drove. We had a 4-seater Can-Am and the 2-seater John Deere. We looked at the pros and cons of each of those machines and talked about what would be beneficial for next season. The uniforms that we wore, hours of work, any changes or suggestions for ordinances to update, add, or remove. I asked them for their recommendations, and I asked them about perception and feedback, because I remember from January 24th, the council, I think Mr. Corbett was the one who asked the question about how do you think the police are going to be received, having uniformed, armed officers on the beach. And I was mindful of that and wanted to make sure that we kept track and watched and listened to what the perception was. And I think this right here gives you a little bit of an idea of how we were received. Santa and Spider-Man. The feedback was incredible. They loved seeing us on the beach. The kids would run over and they sat in the UTV. They took pictures with us. We gave them giveaways that we had, from wristbands to stickers to tattoos to our poker chips with our logo on it. And I don't know that I heard a single person say, "We don't need you out here," or "I'm scared because you're out here." If anything, it was the exact opposite. "I feel safe that you're here." That was the perception and the feedback that we got from having the officers on the beach this year. Some of the recommendations that we got in our beach patrol wrap up that I'd like to see for the next season. We can start with operational. And this is something that I noticed, depending upon where I was at on the Strand. We have computers in our UTVs, and we do a call for service anytime we do an action so that it tracks what we're doing. Those access numbers are only on the front. So if I'm in the emergency lane, there's no number on the back of the post. So I'm creating work for Matt. Sorry, Matt. But it will help. Same way with people that call for help. If they call 911, the dispatcher is going to say, "Where are you at?" And they need some frame of reference, and they may not know that number's on the front. To the far east and west end, there are poles that have no identification on them at all. And we'll get calls from folks that are on their way to Bird Island or at the far east end, and they don't know exactly where they are. So if we could find a numbering system for those. Updating the rule signs at the beach accesses. I know that's already been a topic of conversation. I believe I saw an email come out on that not long ago. We have signage currently that says no tents or cabanas in this area where the pier is. I think it would be wise to have it be a little more descriptive, to say from 3rd to 29th. This area doesn't mention where they actually can go. One of the things I talked with the fire chief on before I put this presentation together and before I stood here was to ask that the fire beach patrol assist when they see violations in the making. One of the things that we had heard was, again, a family setting up a cabana in error, and they see a vehicle or two drive by and that don't say anything to them. And then we show up once it's already set up, and they say, "I just saw somebody go by and they didn't say anything to me. And now it's all set up and you're asking me to move." And they were frustrated with that. We explained to them the difference of the roles. But the people on the beach, they see the UTV, they don't know what it is often, if they're not paying that close attention. So I'd ask the chief if his people, if he sees a violation in the making, can they at least approach, kindly ask the folks, "Hey, before the cops show up, could you do this?" And he agreed that was something that their folks could do. And keep in mind, when we had this meeting in January, the direction was for them not to get involved because they were getting so much pushback from the folks as civilians. But what we're seeing, though, is it is sometimes creating issues when they see somebody drive by that's in authority of some sort, doesn't address it until it's already set up and the kids are in the water, and then we say, "Okay, now you got to move it." So that's a recommendation, operational recommendation going forward. Our personnel was worn out. The 4 people we had were exhausted. We lost one employee to another town because he was burned out on the beach. One of the recommendations was to give them a little bit of a break. A 12-hour day, 3 days in a row on their long weekend is a lot. So when I'm saying assign more units to the Strand, I'm not asking for personnel for that necessarily. But what the recommendation was, if they work a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, work a Friday, Saturday they work patrol, Sunday they're back on the beach. So no more than one consecutive 12-hour shift on the beach at a time. Just an operational thing that we can do in-house. That'll be pretty simplistic. Installation of parking signs for specific ordinances. There are things that we have on the books that are not in North Carolina general statute and may not be rules for parking in other areas, such as parking opposing traffic. We wrote over 300 of those citations. We do have it on our electric message sign, and that's pretty visible. It's a big sign, but it cycles through. And as you know, when people come to the beach, they're not reading everything. So maybe some signs that for ordinances that are specific to Sunset Beach, because a complaint we get a lot is, how am I supposed to know this? We don't have this law where I'm from, or I live, even if they live in Raleigh, that may not be an ordinance in Raleigh. So just some signage for those things. Some future agenda items that were talked about in our beach review that I plan to bring to you at some point would be to prohibit acrobatic kites between 29th and 3rd. To amend 9516, which was amended in the January meeting, we're asking to amend it again to prohibit the clothing that you see there and add specific language to prohibit sexual activities on our beach. We're asking to amend 9507 in a future agenda, a future meeting, to allow umbrella tie downs within the footprint, prohibit neoprene style devices, to prohibit all cabanas with the exception of vendor setup cabanas from April 1 to October 1. I want to talk about that for just a quick minute of the why, although this will be discussed at greater detail in a future agenda. Safe and proper setup. We had a cabana cut loose in a pop-up windstorm that flew into the windshield of our Can-Am and broke that windshield, and it cost us roughly $1,000 to replace that windshield. Our vendors, when we made the change in the season about the timing of the setup, or the staging, if you will, I make one phone call to the vendors. The very next day, they're in 100% of compliance. If there's a storm that's coming, that's their investment, the vendors. And they come and remove their cabanas in a timely fashion. They know what the weather systems are like in North Carolina, and they're here to get their property. If their property does get damaged, they remove it from the beach. I don't know how many, Chief, do you have an idea of how many cabanas that you removed from the beach in the previous years? But we found that with families that travel and they purchase a cabana when they're here, if it gets damaged on the beach, they didn't plan on flying home with it anyways. So they just leave it. And then Public Works or Fire is left to cut that up and remove it from the beach. Another recommendation would be from October 1 to April 1 to allow cabanas or shading devices to be placed anywhere. And this would be vendor setup cabanas, personal cabanas, or any sort of shading device. It's much less people on the beach. As far as any vision obstructions or those sorts of complaints that we see, there'll be much less during that time period.
Would you repeat those dates again?
From October 1 to April 1, so the off season, to allow cabanas or shading devices to be placed anywhere.
This is the off season.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're keeping the only change for the peak of this season would be with the tailgate style tents, the cabanas, to only allow the vendor setup. Because of course, any other shading device that is available in the market, the wind-driven devices, those can be the difference between those, the wind-driven style shading device, and a cabana is in a storm. That cabana is potentially a projectile. The wind gets underneath it and it acts as a tent, a sail, and it just takes off. The other devices, if the wind picks up and it lets go, it falls flat. So there's little risk of somebody getting injured by it or any sort of property damage. Staffing, I kind of touched on the number of officers assigned to patrols. Patrol schedule would start full-time Labor Day weekend and end October 1st. And this can be a variable depending upon weather. But what we saw starting April 1 last year was that the week of Easter, it was like 4th of July. It was very, very busy. And then after that, I think weekends would be the key point, the key times we need to cover in April until we get to the start of the season with Labor Day weekend.
Memorial Day.
Memorial Day. Yeah. Oops. Get better proofreading next time. Thank you for catching that. Yeah, Memorial Day to Labor Day. To keep 2 people on the beach, I feel that we need at least 2 more full-time officers to do so. Fortunately, we had the part-time staff that was able to work as much as they did. As I mentioned, it was tough. Myself and the captain were out there. I mean, we moved around as much as we could. I'd like to have a dedicated supervisor to oversee, to supplement, and support both beach and parking. So 1 supervisor for both the beach program and the parking program. We don't want to spend money if we don't have to spend money. And if we anticipate weather's coming, or if it's just not a busy day, we want to be able to reallocate employees. So having somebody that's more hands-on with those programs would be a benefit. The violation letters that we're sending out takes a lot of work. When the violations are put into the SurfCast system, it's location, license plate, and violation. So in order to mail a letter, we have to run the information through a computer. And it has to be done by a person who is trained and certified to run those inquiries. We had some folks on light duty that were able to assist us through the summer. I don't know what their status will be next summer if they're back to full duty. That's quite a task to lay on our administrative assistant in addition to all of her other duties. So we would need to discuss the potential of seasonal personnel to assist with those, with the unpaid violations. I should mention too that we were very hopeful that with the SurfCast system, that the complaints that walk in the lobby, we could just push off to SurfCast, just call SurfCast, call SurfCast. But we were still taking complaints. We were still talking to people. It wasn't a very friendly image to portray if we just said, there's a business card, call that number. I can't talk to you about this. So we still would spend the time talking with them. Most of the SurfCast violations did still end up at SurfCast, but we still had to spend time talking with those folks that came in through the door, many of which just didn't understand why they got a citation. Questions?
The idea is you're going to come back to us to formally request either changes in main manpower, changes in operational activities. It seems like a good many of those operational activities that you had, particularly that slide with
have it
the
back up.
access numbers,
Yes, sir.
numbers of poles, update the rules, signage, and that is something that can be done internally, just discussion with DPW.
Correct. I believe
Fire
many,
department.
if not all,
Yeah.
all of the operational recommendations can be done internally. I don't believe that needs to come before council. The future agenda items are something that would
Yeah,
definitely have
yeah.
to come before council. And I would like to do it sooner than later, just so that we have time to make sure that folks are aware of the changes for the season, the upcoming season. And of course, if there's going to be a consideration of additional staff, I can't wait till July to.
Have it ready in December and bring it to us in December.
Yes, sir.
You get it ready, I'll put it on the agenda,
Thank you.
and then we'll see what's what.
Just one point. The December meeting, we're going to have new council, at least 2 new council members, right? That's when we
They
make the
need to hear
change.
it.
Can we do it
They
in
gonna be a
November
part of it.
or
Well, when's the November meeting?
14th?
Election
That's-
7th. I mean, they gonna virtually be in anyway, so they need to be here to hear it anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, because they're gonna be stepping in. unfortunately, Mr. Phillips, Mr. Foreman, both, this is gonna be their last meeting in November. I mean, the new people need to have word in, because they're gonna be the ones that's part of it.
And I'll
What
have
do
a
you
full
think? December enough?
presentation as well. I'm not
Yeah.
just gonna, I mean, I'll have a full presentation with an explanation of why
Yeah.
we feel these changes or additions are necessary.
Of course, any information you get before, share it with the council so they can go and
Absolutely.
start reading, studying.
Yes, sir.
December will work fine.
Any more questions?
Any other questions?
Thank you, Chief.
Good, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Chief.
Next up be Fire Chief, Mr. Chips. You have the floor, sir.
All right, let's see if this works on my end. Excellent. All right, similar to Chief Claymore, going to be going through a brief PowerPoint. In a way, my PowerPoint's going to be a lot easier this year than in years past, which I'm grateful for. So starting off with Public Works, a couple of slides for them. They ask me to mention the wheelchairs and the surf walkers. They rented or delivered 128 wheelchairs and 10 surf walkers, which is a great thing we offer here with the town. Public Works does a great job dropping those off, picking them up. Put a couple of pictures in there from the Rotary, because I think everybody knows they donated a couple of those, the walkers and the wheelchairs. So great stuff. People were very appreciative of that. And I think, I'm not sure what numbers are from previous years, but seems to be a lot that we're getting out there. So it's a wonderful thing.
Before you leave those, and that's probably for DPW also, do we have enough of them? And can DPW handle more of them? You know, because there's storage and there's maintenance and repair of them that has to be considered. Sure. If you have the answer, sure, please.
Just get hollered at by James.
Everybody wants to hear what you have to say now.
So we have 13 in service. We usually keep one left out in case there's an emergency, tires breaking, umbrellas, anything like that. So we have essentially we have 12 in service at all times, which they're booked from the middle of May till late August. Surf chairs, we have 6 of them. Other walkers, we have 6 of them. They're not going out as much. I think we're good with those. Maybe a couple more surf chairs would be great. But they're steady out. I mean, we don't rarely have any at the shop.
But you could handle, you could store, you could maintain 2
We
more.
might need to work on our storage a little bit. If we do get more, not a lot of room down there right now. So I mean, we can maybe 3 or 4 more easily. But if we're asking for more than that, then we'll have to find some better places.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Don't go far, Matt. The next one's for you too. All right, damage command is much better than previous years. Much better than previous years. We had great weather this summer. Very few storms that, afternoon storms that really in the past have damaged a lot of cabanas. We've had great weather, so 110 damaged cabanas that Public Works had to cut up and get rid of. So good season for that. Okay, moving on, 2023 beach season review. Fire department side of things. So we went through the season with 14 dedicated seasonal employees. So a lot of those employees were returning from previous years with lots of experience. I'm fortunate enough to have a fantastic staff that works out there, and I can't say thanks enough for the hard work, dedication that those staff members really performed this year on the beach. So it was wonderful. Various backgrounds, firefighters, part-time firefighters, EMS, healthcare professionals, things of that nature. One of the things we increased this year was training. So we held a lot more training than in years past. Our we had more time on our hands in the morning to do training, daily training, weekly training, swim training. So we just had more time to do that, and that's something we really needed to do. So I'm proud to say training hours have increased. So I want to talk a little bit about our partnership with the National Weather Service in Wilmington. So we are continuing our surf reporting twice a day, twice daily. Beach Patrol reports to the National Weather Service so they can build their surf report, which area beaches from Wilmington south more and more every year participating, so we can know what the currents are doing, and that's how we base our flag system. So flag system, we're still doing that in the same locations. We've got the gazebo, 15th, 16th, and 40th Street. So that's in parallel with the reporting from the National Weather Service. So we spend a lot of time trying to get that message out to our beach visitors and talk about the dangers and the dangers of the rip currents. So just a couple of slides. I know Chief Claymore went through a couple of photos, but just put a couple of highlights to show the busyness of the beach. June 24th, July 4th, August 5th, September 2nd. Okay, going over to reporting. So in your packet, you saw kind of our daily reporting stats, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what we are actually reporting. So number one, medical intervention. That's when we provide first aid or initiate patient contact. So we're actually performing a medical care service to the citizens. So common occurrences for that are heat-related illnesses, falls, sprains, fainting, minor cuts, scrapes, and things of that nature. So when we check the box for medical intervention, that doesn't mean that the patient is actually transported via ambulance. In some cases, it does, but not all end with a patient transported to the hospital. Some people just, we care for their wounds, bandage things, and send them on their way. But we do provide care. So medical education, that's where we educate the citizens on environmental concerns, coastal wildlife, ocean sea life, heat-related incidents. That's where we just really don't provide medical care, but we educate the visitors on, what happens when you get stung by a jellyfish, stingray, heat exhaustion, signs of that nature. Water rescue, that's where we respond or initiate the rescue of a drowning or near drowning victim. Water safety education. So our beach patrol, we try to educate citizens. So whenever we have the opportunity to educate a family and talk about the rip currents, talk about the flag systems, that's where we do that. Pier pushouts. So one of our priorities for this year is we have 2 personnel. We operate on a pendulum style patrol. So we try to keep a person near the pier at all times. So when I say pendulum, one person works the pier, the other person patrols east. When they come back for their east patrol, they swap sides, one person goes west. So think of it as a pendulum, but we keep somebody at the pier and we ask people to move away from the pier. So all day long, we're just trying to keep people. That's our worst area for rescues and just a high impact area. So we keep somebody there doing the pier pushouts. Code education, that's where we distribute Chief Claymore's mostly cabana ordinance pamphlet. So when we see the cabanas going up specifically, a lot of times it's near the pier. We try to just give them a flyer and say, hey, you can't be here, and here's your flyer. Citizens complaints. So we take complaints for random things, could be a issue with the restrooms, a broken board, a nail sticking up the walkway. So whenever we do something like that, interact with the public, we're keeping track of that. And then we, most of the time, reach out to the Public Works Department to get that fixed. In most cases, it's a Public Works issue. Public relations, that's where we just answer questions and open up a dialogue to people on the beach. So all day long we're getting, you know, where's a good place to eat tonight? Where can we play putt? You know, how far is it to the Kindred Spirit mailbox? So whenever we can answer questions, we're just keeping a track of that. Animal rescue, you know, fish, marine wildlife, whenever that gets washed up, stranded, birds in particular, that's where we just call our local sources, bird rescue, turtle patrol, things like that. And, you know, at times we do help out, you know, trying to pick up the injured bird if we can. Filling holes and jellyfish. You know, a couple of times this year we had the really painful jellyfish wash up, and man of wars, and we'd bury those and get rid of those. So keeping a little documentation of that. So that's pretty tough to see on this screen, but here's just, I put the months in here of the final reporting. So April's a little slow, but as you can see, they were busy running their day-to-day operations out there, filling holes. You know, as you can see, public relations is always our number one item. And I'll just cruise through here unless you have any questions about this and get to the final numbers. So May, you can kind of see it as the beach becomes more crowded, we're getting busier and busier. Okay, so this is through October 1st to our final 2023 call for service. So medical intervention, 196, medical education, 381, 28 total water rescues, 1367 water safety education, 1763 peer pushouts, 1451 code educations, 128 citizen complaints, 2286 public relations, 28 animal rescues, and 379 holes, 23 jellyfish. So any questions about that?
We had water rescues. We did not have any drownings this year. Is that correct?
We had quite a few close calls, but
Yeah.
no, we didn't,
Good.
which is wonderful.
Yeah,
And
that's good for us.
I'm glad you asked. I don't have a number. I wish I could say how many rescues we stopped by keeping somebody at the pier and keeping people away from the pier. That's something we'll never know, but I think we did very well by doing that this year. And thank you for allowing that.
The beach patrol, primary responsibility is beach safety.
Yes.
And John made a great point just now with, you know, we had no deaths, which is it's just fantastic. So you people have definitely done that job. But another job you've done, as you mentioned, as you go through this list, medical education, water safety education, code education, public relations, is public relations.
It is.
And I want to compliment you and your staff for what you did this summer. I'm out there and talking to the people who you hire, their attitudes, always proactive that I can see, and a lot of public relations, which can only be good for our town, can only be good for the people who visit our town.
Wonderful.
So I congratulate you on that. And it was a safe summer, pretty much. And so that's excellent too. So congratulations. Congratulate the people that worked there with you. They were really great.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a job well done on both police and fire department
Yes.
on the beach this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, similar to Chief Claymore, we have to put the right people out there. And, you know, Deputy Chief Adams and I were speaking yesterday, and, you know, the people on the beach are really the face of the town. You know, a lot of people don't get to meet town council or fire staff or police staff, and they get to meet the people on the beach. So their interaction with town staff, town employees are that beach. So we need to, you know, make sure we're being nice, recommending things and welcoming people to the beach. And I think staff does I can't say thanks enough to the staff. They do a great job.
And I agree with John. The pictures that Chief Claymore showed us of his people interacting with the public and taking pictures of the public, and it's great when people realize that the people are there to protect them, the police, fire, they're good people, and they want nothing but the best for the people who visit our town. So,
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Excellent.
Well done.
So a couple of recommendations I have. I'd like for you to consider, and if you would like, we can add this to Chief Claymore's, but I want to talk about prohibited metal shovels. I've been doing some research on beaches across North Carolina and the East Coast, and a lot of beaches are adopting an ordinance for no metal shovels. I'd like to talk about that. I think that would really prevent some of the holes, the large holes that we're seeing across the beach strand. Something to talk about.
Our current ordinance says the the holes can be no bigger than 18 inches deep and 5 feet across.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that should be you think should be revised? You want to think about that?
I think if we do the metal shovels, I don't think they'll get that big. What's tough is when you see the holes, you ask people to cover them up. A lot of times they leave without covering them up. So that's where the problem comes in. And some of the holes come at nighttime. So, but just something that, since I noticed so many beaches doing it, I'd like to at least bring it up and talk about it. Prohibit swimming within 25 feet of the pier. So we kept someone at the pier all year long, and there's not an ordinance saying. So we just ask. We have, our people have whistles. They blow whistles, and most of the time people move and very, very kind when they move. But this summer, one of the staff members came up and said, "Hey, Chief, a group of teenagers they're not moving. What can we do?" And I'm like, well, there's really not an ordinance doing that. So if that's something we can add to the ordinance, if that's legal, I'd like to consider that, because that's very dangerous to swim around the pier with the barnacles on the pilings and stuff. So I think that's something we need to definitely consider. And then staffing, increase of staffing to 3. I would love to have one more person, June, July, August, just to help out with that pendulum patrol and get us down to the far ends a little bit quicker. So as we do the pendulum patrol, if we're down by the water going to the east end, that's really 30, 40 minutes, possibly up to an hour before we're down on the east end. So if we could incorporate another staff member on the other end, we could keep the beach covered a little bit better.
Were there times during the weekends and so on where you did have 3 on the beach?
We did a couple of busy weekends. We put an extra person out there, and
Okay.
Deputy Chief Adams and we were out almost daily this summer, just providing extra help, extra coverage for that. So most of the time, him or I were out on every Saturday and Sunday, just providing some oversight and giving them an extra hand and things like that.
Thank you.
So that's all I have. Any questions?
Any more questions?
No.
Chief? All right, stay right there. We got the next issue.
You got it.
Again, thank you very much
Yes.
for
Thank you.
beach patrol
Yes.
and for the police patrol out there on the beach and the parking enforcement.
Up next is your final proposal for the fire truck purchase. Consideration of the final proposal. Richard, you want to go, or if the administrator has anything in regards to this, let's go through this one.
So if it's okay, I'll just give you a brief rundown of
Yeah.
the truck, some of the things we've done. So we started this process by setting up an apparatus committee that's consistent of Deputy Chief Adams, Lieutenant Graham, Firefighter Fulmer, and Firefighter Kerr. So they really set out to determine what our next apparatus should be engine-wise. So they started a committee, started working with some things, and one of their top priorities were to construct a fire engine that closely matches our Sutphen Quint. So at Station 1, we operate a Quint. So their main responsibility was get a truck that matches that. So the controls are the same, the pumping's the same, and as much as humanly possible, keep things similar so firefighters can be more familiar with the operation. They shot for a low overall length of truck, low overall height of the truck, and a low hose bed. So number one, pulling hoses off the truck, they want that to be as low as possible. So I think they did a great job, put together a great rig that you see in front of you. Some more things that they added is point-to-point wiring on the truck, which is a pretty large thing. So it just helps with future problems, and it tries to keep things more mechanical than electronic. A complete wiring, lighting package to make sure we're visible when we're running emergency traffic throughout town. A low dash height for the driver to be able to see out a little bit better. We matched the Quint with the vehicle camera recording system, so if there was ever an accident, we would have, full video coverage of that. And that's pretty much it. So any questions about the truck itself?
What was during the budget discussions? What kind of number did you come up?
So during budget, I guesstimated an estimated 875,000. So every month we're almost seeing price increases from all manufacturers. It's sharing in a lot of things that we're dealing with. Price is just, it's going crazy. It's going crazy. I talked to the vendor just a few days ago to get some pointers on, hey, why is this so expensive? Why does the price continually go up? So there's a few things when we talk about that. Number one, fire truck manufacturers have seen a record number of sales since 2021. So I'm not sure how that came about. If municipalities, before the pandemic hit or things, they kind of held off purchases, and now they're buying a lot of fire trucks. But they are having issues with parts availability. So when we started, I first started having conversations with the manufacturer sometime around March. Delivery dates were 3 years, just under 3 years. Now they're 4 with this latest spec. So.
Wow, I wouldn't want to wait any longer.
No, it'll be obsolete by the time we get it.
That's the thing.
Mr. Mayor, I have a motion.
Can we talk about the financing and that part of it before we approve it?
Okay.
Thank you.
I can just give you a brief, basically the way that we're going to move forward with this. We've already allocated $150,000 for the down payment. We did that through the budget. What that will do is secure the truck for them to be able to move forward. Due to the fact that it is almost 4 years out now at this point, we're basically committing to the truck, but we're not allocating all of the money for it. So when it gets closer and we have a timeline of when it's coming in, we'll decide if we're going to pay for the truck or finance the truck. That's not a decision that you have to make right now. We can also allocate more money in the next budget to put aside to put towards it so we don't have to finance the whole thing. But a bank won't finance it at this point because we don't have it for 4 years. So it'll basically go into what we call a CIP. So it's like construction in process. And so it'll be in our fixed asset schedule at the deposit value, and will increase as we do it over time if you add more money to it until we do the purchase, and then it will become an actual fixed asset.
So once we pay the $150,000 down payment, the price is solid.
Yes, unless they
Well-
built in a contingency.
Almost solid. Okay.
Yeah.
They have in the paperwork the term change order fund.
Yeah. So it could go down
Mhm.
if they don't use all of the contingency.
Okay, that 10,000 is a contingency fund
Right.
right now. Okay. And it's worked into the final price that we have of 937,000.
I will tell you that another town that I helped, they had ordered a fire truck and they went, they ended up having to use the contingency. And if they had not done a down payment, they would have ended up paying more on the truck. So they were lucky they got in because of how the prices have increased so much. So putting the down payment on it really is a significant down payment.
Okay, so we put 150 now,
Mm-hmm.
and we got just say 48 months that
Yeah.
comes up. That gives us another 3 to 4
Yeah, we can
fiscal
put more money
years.
aside
We
too.
can take money, just put it aside. It's not paying them, it's just putting money aside
Yep.
so that we've got it built up. So that last payment and any financing will be a much more clear and sort of less impactful decision.
Correct.
Anything else we need to know about money?
Not right now. This is already budgeted.
Okay.
So
Good, thank you.
I move that we accept the final proposal and approve the purchase of the Sutton heavy-duty custom pumper truck.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
Next up is our public comments on anything today, not just agenda items. So if anyone has anything, you got the floor. We'll give you 3 minutes. Please state your name, your address. If anybody's got anything, you're welcome to come up now.
Good morning. My name is Dane Barnes. I'm the co-founder of Shibumi Shade, the most popular beach shade in virtually every beach in North Carolina, the East Coast and the Gulf Coast. I brought one with me here today if anybody's unfamiliar, but it's a wind-driven shading device. It's so popular because it's very lightweight. It only weighs 4 pounds. One person can easily set it up by themselves. And importantly, it cannot break or blow away like the cabanas that Chief Claymore and Chief Childress have talked about as well. And I also, for the council, I just brought a couple of photos just to make sure everybody's familiar with what it looks like. If I can approach.
Just hand it right there and you'll have to still pass them down. Thank you.
I started, so I'm sorry, I didn't state my address. I live in Raleigh. Okay, live in Raleigh. That's where Shibumi is headquartered. And I started Shibumi Shade with my brother and best friend back in 2016. We came up with the idea, we taught ourselves how to sew, and we just never dreamed that it would become so popular. And Shibumis are found in over 800 beaches these days. They're all sewn in North Carolina and Virginia. So as North Carolinians, we're really proud that they're sewn here in North Carolina and Virginia as well. So I'm here today on behalf, not on behalf, but in support of the police department, beach patrol, fire, and Sunset Beach families to just, I guess, suggest to the council maybe a solution to kind of help make things better for the police, beach patrol, and so forth. Before I do that, first, just to point out, Sunset Beach is the only beach in North Carolina with any restrictions on Shibumi shades, or said more generically, wind-driven shading devices. Every beach in North Carolina allows Shibumis to be placed anywhere on the beach, not just in the back row. And so I guess my question for the council is, would allowing wind-driven shading devices to be placed anywhere on the beach, not just the back row, would that reduce really a lot of the pain points that Chief Claymore and Chief Childress have talked about? Namely, Chief Claymore mentioned that his department, the Beach Patrol, did a wonderful job in moving 2,637 cabanas or shibumis that were kind of not properly placed in that line, which was about 3/4 or 75% of the actions that they took on the beach. he mentioned that the 4 beach patrol officers were, exhausted and so forth. And so the question is, by simply allowing wind-driven shading devices to be anywhere on the beach, like they are in every other beach in North Carolina and 99% of beaches in the United States, would that alleviate a lot of that work and a lot of those problems and free the public safety up to do even more of the, kind of really amazing stuff like we saw with all the photos of being that first point of contact and making sure people have a great time. So that's all. I guess one last point is Ocean Isle Beach did the same thing, where previously they just had shibumis on the back row, and then at the advice of their chief of police and beach patrol allowed them to be moved anywhere. And it's been a huge win for the mayor and the board of commissioners and for families, where it just makes life a lot easier for everybody involved as well. So thank you for your time, and happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Got any questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can just leave that right there. I'll take it. Anyone else? Public comment?
John Hopkins, Sunset Beach Trading Company. I'm just trying to understand as a retailer of wind-driven devices and umbrellas and super safe umbrellas with technical anchoring systems that keep them in place. I'm trying to understand why wind-driven devices and tailgate tents are relegated to the back row. Is it aesthetics or is it public safety? Because I have in my phone instances of umbrellas tumbling down the beach. I have photos and images of cabanas at the trash, piled up at the trash with their broken skeletons. And as Claymore mentioned, a windshield being destroyed by one tumbling. So is it about public safety or is it about aesthetics? I understand the public safety. We seem to be driving by our parking reality. We're putting a lot of people at the pier. So I understand banning these larger devices from 3rd Street to the pier and then to 29th Street. But beyond those points, why are we not allowing shading devices, wind-driven devices, cabanas, tailgate tents, sobellos, whatever you want to call them? Why are we not allowing them further away from the crowded pier area? I just think we should be thinking about that. I didn't notice one thing in Claymore's presentation where it said something about umbrellas, tie downs within a footprint. According to the ordinance right now, a tie down would make that umbrella go to the back row. So now we're going to encourage people to be safe, but now we're just having a lot of problems that we're creating. I would like to see anything from 3rd eastward and 29th westward. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Anyone else? There's no more public comments. Anything else from staff?
Yep.
Nothing from the council? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Sure you ain't got no more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you all for coming out. Thank you guys for the presentation.